So we're back to film the second video of the two-video series on the Pentax Spotmatic SPII camera. This video is going to focus on how to use it. So we just saw all of the different features. The first thing that you would do when using your Pentax SPII is load film. Now this is of course assuming that the battery in it's good and the light meter works and everything. We're making that assumption. So we're going to load film. The film in these load all the same way. So if you've got a 35mm manual camera like this, Spotmatic SPII, K1000, Canon AE1, Nikon F3, Nikon F, all of these load basically the same way. It's not until you get into things like the Nikon N80, Canon RT, those are the two I have, which is why they come to mind, where things start getting a little bit different, and the cameras have automatic winding. So the SPII has a slightly different take-up spool than the SP. The film does not go all the way through the spool, or at least not as easily as it did in the SP. But you load it the same basic way. You put the film in here, and like I said, these all load the same way. Anyway, you put the film on this side, lower the film rewind knob, and then you can see that the film rests, the edges of the film touches the film guide rails, and that the sprocket holes are over the film rails. You would normally then immediately close the film back and then take a few exposures to advance the film to the starting point, which I'll do now. But before you advance the film, tighten it up in the spool a bit, advance, and every time you take a picture, you can see that the counter is moving a little bit forward. Orange dot means it's ready to go. So how would this actually be used in practice? Take a look at the Pentax SP video and you'll see the light meter from that camera being used. It's easier just to take a look at that video than for me to re-record it, because getting that recorded was extremely difficult to do. It's very hard to hold the camera at the proper angle while that's going on. So, alright, now I've got my film in the back. I'm going to load a lens. I'm going to mount a lens onto the camera. This is an M42 screw mount adapter, so the lens just goes on. There we go. And it just screws on. Screws clockwise to tighten, counterclockwise to loosen. And you know it's on all the way when it won't go clockwise any further. Oops. And the orange diamond is on top. Now you just compose your image through the viewfinder there, whatever you want it to look like, and then once you have it composed, you'll want to meter it. To meter it, you go to this switch on the front. This is the metering switch. Flip it up. That turns the meter on. Now you set your aperture to wherever you want the aperture to be set, and we're going to go with f8. And because to take a good picture, it's just f8 and be there, as they say. Ba-dum-cha. Anyway, we're going to set it to f8, and then you would look at your image as you want to compose it, and it would give you an average meter reading. So it would take all the light coming in through the lens, average it as though it was an 18% gray card, and then tell you what the proper exposure should be. What it will actually tell you is whether you're over or underexposed. There's a needle on the right side, underexposed, overexposed, just right. And so if it's underexposed at 1/125th and you go down to 1/30th and it's just right, then that means you're set up properly for an average meter reading. Excuse me. It's like 1 a.m. I'm finishing this up before I do some other work before I go to sleep. So I'm dragging a little bit tonight. Likewise, if you're way overexposed when you compose the image, you would then slow your shutter speed, or reduce your aperture. Those are the two ways to control your exposure. Now, one of the downfalls, of course, is that you have an averaging meter in this, meaning it averages the entire scene for calculating the exposure. If you're looking at taking a photo of something which is in a shadow, and you want that to be the area that is properly exposed, you would have to take a meter reading off something close to you that's of a similar tone, adjust the camera, recompose, and then take your picture. We'll go over that in a separate video in the future about how to do composition with different metering types. As with other cameras of this type, of this era and of this basic functionality, excuse me, this camera does have the ability to take multiple exposures. And the way you would do that is you would take your picture normally, picture's taken. Now, normally, when you take a picture, you would just advance it right away, and if you're going to take a double exposure, you can't do that immediately. Tighten up on this a little bit, put your finger and hold down on the film rewind button. Don't rewind the film, however. Don't rewind it, because that's going to cause you to misalign your double exposure. Now, holding this in place, holding down, like I'm doing with my pinky, the film rewind button, advance the lever. If you want to take a triple exposure, you just do that again. And then you would know that your camera's not advancing because this is not spinning. Your film's not advancing because this is staying in place. Once you finish taking your multiple exposures, put the lens cap back on and take a dead shot. And what that does is starts the film advancing again, and make sure that the next image after your multiple exposure doesn't overlap your multiple exposure frame. Because as you advance this from a multiple exposure, the advance mechanism doesn't engage instantaneously. It has to advance a little bit first, so you'll have about a quarter of a frame overlap if you don't take a dead frame between the multiple exposure and the nod. So that's really how you use this. The features and functions are very straightforward. It's a very user-friendly, simple-to-use camera that can return really high-end and great results in the hands of somebody who's just learning or who has been doing photography for years. These are really, really fantastic cameras. I'm going to take the film out as we wrap up here. So if you have any questions, please leave a comment, and I'm pretty good about responding fairly quickly. If these two videos were helpful to you, please give me a thumbs up down below. And if you would like to see more videos about photography and non-photography related things, subscribe to my channel, as I have a whole bunch more videos coming. Working on writing scripts for some of them right now, in fact. And I think that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been useful, and I hope you enjoy whichever video you watch next.